Welcome in everyone, this is Sean with MTG808 Jr. and today we're going to be taking a look at my version of Mono Black Deathtouch, which was inspired by Jansen's Mono Black Deathtouch that took down one of our recent tournaments. Before we jump into that though, just want to make sure everyone knows about our upcoming events. Of course, we do have our scholarship tournament coming up on December 1st. That'll be at Dirtle Zone over in IAEA. And then this video should be going up on October 21st, so we are having that tournament today on October 21st over at Westside Comics. November 4th, we'll have Youth Standard Pauper over at the Planet, and then again on November 24th, Youth Standard Pauper over at the Planet. We will likely have a Youth Standard Pauper tournament in November over at Minikyu, so stay tuned for that to be announced, as well as potentially one more in November over at Westside. We will see. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And we hope to see you at our December 1st Youth Champion Scholarship Tournament. Of course, first place at that tournament will be receiving $500 in scholarship, and second place will be receiving $250 in scholarship. Alright, so we saw Jansen's Mono Black Deathtouch deck that took down our first tournament with Guilds of Ravnica. I'll be sharing my version of Mono Black Deathtouch, which has just a couple changes, so of course the link to both of those decks will be in the description here. But here we have my version of the deck in Magic Online, and the majority of the curve is the same. I did make some changes, probably most notably I am playing Moodmark Painter, the 4-mana 2/3 human shaman with Undergrowth. When Moodmark Painter enters the battlefield, target creature gets Menace and +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So we are playing 28 creatures in the deck. Since a whole bunch of those creatures have Deathtouch, we are an aggro deck, we are going to be attacking, we are going to be trying to push damage through. So our creatures are probably going to be ending up in the graveyard. So a Moodmark Painter on turn 4 will probably give a creature +1 or 2 and Menace, which is fine on any of our Deathtouch creatures, right? Because if they double block Deathtouch creatures, then both of whatever they block with will die. But later in the game, maybe around turn 7 or 8, this guy should be giving a pretty substantial boost. So I'm very optimistic about the power of this card. I think that this is a really good archetype for it, and I think it's a really good way to top out the curve in our Mono Black aggro deck. So working our way down the curve here, we have Pitiless Gorgon, 3-mana 2/2 with Deathtouch, and then Whisper Agent, 3-mana 3/2 flash. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. So Deathtouch is really good, again with Moodmark Painter, because we are just trying to trade creatures with our opponent. And Whisper Agent, the surveil mechanic allows us to look at the top card of our deck, and if we want to, we can put it into our graveyard, which could potentially, add creatures to our graveyard for the surveil mechanic, and it also just adds consistency to the deck. I'm a huge fan of the surveil mechanic, and Whisper Agent is, it just seems like an auto-include. Jansen was playing Veiled Shade in this slot. Here it is. Veiled Shade. 3-mana 2/2, pay 2 mana. It gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It is a pretty solid mana sink. I have Jousting Lance as a mana sink in this deck, which I'll talk about after the creatures, but I never got to see him play with the deck, but my gut reaction on Veiled Shade is that it is not going to be the most powerful card, especially if you draw multiples. You only have so much mana, you can't really make the most use out of having multiples of these. So potentially powerful card, but I think we have Whisper Agent just adds so much to the deck that I want to try it out on 3. The 2-drops are exactly the same as what Jansen was playing for Burglar at for Dusk Legion Zealot. Right, 2-mana 1/1s with enter the battlefield triggers. Burglar Rat makes them discard a card. Dusk Legion Zealot draws us a card, and we lose a life. So these cards just kind of allow us to play the attrition game. Right, if they're able to trade with something, great. We can strap a Jousting Lance on them, or we can just chump block something. They end up being a creature in the graveyard to count as Undergrowth, and then of course you always get the card back off of them. Alright, and then in the 1-drop slot, we have 4 Skirting Heartstopper, 4 Hired Poisoner. That's what Jansen was playing. We are playing 2 Stronghold Confessor. I did want to up the creature count a little bit from what Jansen was playing, mostly because of Moodmark Painter. And I think this guy is the next best 1-drop that we can play. 1 mana, 1/1 Menace with Kicker. You can kick it for 4 total mana, so 3 additional mana. If you paid the kicker cost, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it. So you can play it on turn 1. It's a 1-drop with Menace, which means it's going to get in a bunch of damage early. And then, if you already have a different 1-drop to play on turn 1, you can wait until turn 4, and then this guy's a pretty solid beater. Alright, so looking at our non-creature spells, I said the mana sync that I chose to play is Jousting Lance. 2 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and as long as it's your turn, the equipped creature has first strike, and you equip this for 3 mana. So first strike with Deathtouch is really, really strong, and this is the only equipment that gives first strike at Standard Pauper, and it obviously only gives first strike on your turn, so you're not going to be able to have your Deathtouch first strikers on defense, but in terms of offense, this is pretty amazing. It basically turns any Deathtouch creature, which we have, we have 11 of them. It turns any Deathtouch creature into a really great attacker, and then any of our other creatures, it turns them into pretty solid attackers as well. So it's kind of a big mono commitment. That's why I'm not playing too many of them, but it is a very powerful effect. So I think Jousting Lance is a really natural fit for the deck. Looking at our non-creature spells, opting not to play Moan of Craving, again, just because I wanted to keep the creature count high, so didn't want to play too many removal spells. And then the removal spells I did choose to play, trying to keep them lower on the curve, just to kind of help with the deck's ability to tempo its opponents out. So Skullduggery, I think that this card is better than Fungal Infection, mostly because your opponents will be quick to want to trade with your Deathtouch creatures, and then Skullduggery giving your Deathtouch creature essentially +2/+2 is going to be a really big game. They're going to try to block your Deathtouch creature with a 2/2 or a 1/1 as soon as possible, and then Skullduggery is just going to take out that creature, keep your Deathtouch creature around. You're going to get some really good trades with Skullduggery. I think that the extra +1/+1 that you can give a creature in combat is going to be worth more than the Saproling token from Fungal Infection. Dead Weight, what can I say? This card is great. Not quite Shock, but sometimes it's better than Shock, because sometimes you just need to shrink a really big creature. It can't go to the face, but it is just really efficient removal. And then, of course, at the top of our removal curve, we're just playing 3 murders. This card is just so efficient. If you are not expecting that big of a metagame, meaning that you're expecting your opponents to play pretty small creatures, you could play Moment of Craving in this slot. I think that's completely fine. Moment of Craving is a great card. But, I just like having the flexibility of being able to kill any creature. So that's the main deck. Pretty close to what Jansen was playing, just playing a different Curve Topper, trying out Whisper Agent, and then Stronghold Confessor and Jousting Lance instead of Veiled Shade and Vicious Rumors. As I said in the top 4 recap, I think Vicious Rumors has some potential, but just the fact that if you draw it late and your opponent doesn't have any cards in their hand, it's not going to be that great of a card, so I'm skeptical of including it in the deck. Moving over to the sideboard, of course we do have Moment of Craving here in the sideboard. If you are playing against another aggro deck, especially a red aggro deck that has a lot of reach, you're just going to want to up your removal count, and then Moment of Craving is your next best option. Gaining the 2 life is so good against aggro decks. We have a 3rd Jousting Lance here in the board. If you're playing against a deck that is looking to muck up the board, that you're going to have to win through combat, Jousting Lance will allow you to just kind of have that edge in the combat. And then here's our package that comes in against control for Deadeye Tormentor. It's a 3 mana 2/2 with Raid. If it entered the battlefield and you attacked with a creature this turn, target opponent discards a card. So between Burglar Rat and Deadeye Tormentor, we have a reasonable amount of ways to pressure our opponent's hand. The control decks are trying to develop card advantage, so this allows us to fight them on that axis. And then Gravedigger, of course, also allows us to fight on the card advantage axis. 4 mana, 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. The most common play pattern against control in the early game is you play out your curve, they play out their curve of removal. You both end up down on cards, but then they slowed you down enough that they can play their card draw spells to kind of get an edge, and then if you follow that up with Gravedigger to get your card advantage back, then you're going to be on even footing with them. And then the last card here for the control matchup is Never Happened. Never Happened. It costs 3, right, which is very expensive for a discard spell, but you get to look at their hand, and then you can choose a non-land card from that player's graveyard or hand and exile it. So if your opponent is trying to get their Soul Salvage loop going with either G2 Chronicler or Salvager of Secrets, yeah, that's the card, you can exile the copy that is the whichever one they only have one of. If they only have one Soul Salvage, exile that. If they only have one Salvager of Secrets, exile that. So, we are playing the slightly more expensive discard spell in order to specifically fight one deck in the metagame. Alright, so this is Mono Black Aggro. I'm very curious. We've seen the archetype prove itself already by taking down our first tournament with Guilds of Ravnica. I don't know if this build is better or worse than Jansen's. I am very curious to see how Moodmark Painter does. I do think that it has a lot of potential. And then, of course, I'm just a sucker for Whisper Agent and Surveil. It's got a special place in my heart. But, Jansen showed us that playing 8 1-drop Deathtouch creatures is a recipe for success, and I think that this will not be the last deck that we see that is featuring these 8 1-drop creatures. So thanks for stopping by. If you enjoy the content that we create here, or you just want to support Youth Magic here on Oahu, please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber. Monthly subscription service. You choose how much you want to pay each month to support us, and then of course you get access to some special perks. We do have our playmat perk that's going to be rolled out in the next couple weeks. I finally actually ordered them, so keep your eyes peeled for an announcement on that. But if you want to support what we do, put in that little extra, please consider becoming a patron. Of course, if you cannot become a patron, just watching our videos, hitting that like button, becoming a subscriber is a great way to support what we do. So thank you for stopping by, and I hope to catch you next time. Catch you later. Peace.